I have a bomb in my briefcase, and I will blow this damn plane clean out the sky if I do not get what I want. The man in C-18C. He didn't look dangerous. He wore a dark business suit, a thin black tie, polished loafers, and his hair was neatly combed. And to the flight attendants, he looked like any other middle-aged businessman flying out of Portland the night before Thanksgiving. He was calm, he was quiet, and he was forgettable. But when the plane reached cruising altitude, he leaned toward the flight attendant and handed her a folded note. At first, she slipped it into her purse without ever reading it, because men pass notes to flight attendants all the time. Usually phone numbers, sometimes compliments. But you see, the man didn't smile. Instead, he leaned closer and spoke in a very low voice. Miss, you better read that note, and you better read it now. Her name was Florence Schaffner, and when she unfolded the paper, her hands started uncontrollably shaking, because you see, written in careful block letters were 8 simple words. I have a bomb in my briefcase. Within the next few hours, the quiet man in C-18C would pull off one of the most daring crimes in American history. He would go on to hijack a commercial jet, demand $200,000 in cash, and force the crew to fly into the darkness over the Pacific Northwest. And then, somewhere over the wilderness of Washington State, he would jump out of the airplane into a storm that was fierce and at night, with the ransom money strapped to his body. And he was never seen again. No body was ever found. No parachute was ever found. There was no confirmed trace of this man whatsoever. And more than 50 years later, investigators still ask the same damn question. Did D.B. Cooper die in the wilderness that night, or did he walk away with the perfect crime? And so how did all this start? Well, the hijacking began at Portland International Airport. The aircraft was a Boeing 727 operated by Northwest Orient Airlines, and it would probably be a good time for me to tell you that the Boeing 727 was unique in a way that other aircrafts were not. It had a rear tail door that actually came down with stairs. So keep that in mind for the rest of the story. And it was Flight 305. The destination was Seattle, Washington. The flight time, just about 30 minutes. It was short enough that most passengers barely settled into their seats before the descent ever began. But this flight would become anything but ordinary, because the man who bought the ticket used the name Dan Cooper. And later, to a media mistake, the world would come to know him as D.B. Cooper. He paid cash for the one-way ticket, $20. I guess you can tell it's been a long time ago. He carried only a black briefcase and one brown paper bag, and no one noticed him. And you also need to remember, back in this time frame, security in an airport, it's nothing like we know today. Nothing. About 10 minutes after takeoff, Cooper handed the note to flight attendant Florence Schaffner. And when she sat beside him, he calmly opened his briefcase. And what did she see inside that briefcase? Well, she saw wires, red cylinders, and a battery. Something that looked very much like a bomb. And Cooper spoke quietly. I want $200,000 by the time we land in Seattle. And then he added 4 more demands. I need 4 parachutes. I need a fuel truck ready when we land. No tricks, no funny business, or I will blow this plane up with everyone in it. Schaefer carried the message to the cockpit. And again, the cockpits weren't locked like they are today. The pilots immediately contacted air traffic control, and soon, Federal Bureau of Investigation was involved. And they made a decision to give Cooper exactly what he wanted. Now, what surprised everyone was how Cooper was so calm, and he remained that way. Passengers had no idea they were on a hijacked plane, and I reckon that's exactly what he wanted it to be like. Cooper even ordered a drink, bourbon and soda. He paid for it himself. Now get that, he's hijacking a plane, $200,000 ransom, and he buys his own drink. Go figure, right? And while the aircraft circled Seattle, waiting for the ransom money to arrive, Cooper chatted casually with the flight attendant. At one point, he even reassured her, "I'm not here to hurt anybody." But investigators later said something about Cooper's behavior that stood out. He seemed to know the airplane very well. Again, the Boeing 727 had a rare feature, a rear stairway that could be lowered during flight. Very, very, very few civilians even knew about it, but D.B. Cooper did. And now we get to the exchange. When the plane finally landed in Seattle, authorities followed Cooper's instructions carefully. The passengers were released. The money was delivered. $200,000 in $20 bills. I can't even imagine how much that money would be worth today. And it weighed about 20 pounds. 20 pounds of hard, cold cash. 4 parachutes were loaded onto the aircraft, and then Cooper issued his final instructions. He ordered the plane to take off again, and this time the destination was Mexico City, but with several unusual requirements. I want you to fly low, and I want you to fly slow. Landing gear partially deployed, and the rear stairs ready. Only 4 people remained on board: the pilot, the co-pilot, a flight engineer, and a flight attendant, Tina Mucklow. Somewhere in the darkness above Washington State, well, that's where D.B. Cooper made his move. At 8:13 p.m., the cockpit crew, they felt something strange. Sudden upward shift, like the plane had briefly lost weight. They looked at their instruments. The rear staircase indicator light had turned on, the stairs were open, and D.B. Cooper had jumped. And below, the aircraft stretched miles of rugged forest, the region near Mount St. Helens and the Columbia River. Oh, it was cold, it was rainy, and it was pitch black. The wind speeds near 200 miles per hour. Experts later said the conditions were just brutal, even for experienced parachutists. Cooper had jumped wearing a business suit and loafers, which raised a terrifying possibility. He might not have survived the landing. And so the largest manhunt in United States history progressed. The search began immediately. Hundreds of soldiers combed the forest. Helicopters scanned the terrain, and divers searched rivers. but they found absolutely nothing. Not a parachute, no body, and no briefcase, and no money. It was as if Cooper had vanished into thin air. And we fast forward 9 years later. A young boy made a discovery that totally stunned investigators. In 1980, Brian Ingram was digging in sand along the Columbia River near a place called Tina Bar. He uncovered 3 bundles of cash. Each bundle contained decaying $20 bills. Serial numbers, they definitely confirmed the truth. They were part of D.B. Cooper's ransom. But investigators could never explain just how the money got there, because it was buried along the creek bank. Water rises, water falls. This wasn't washed up. The child was digging, and he found those stacks of $20 bills. The location was miles from the suspected jump zone, and only a tiny fraction of the ransom was found. And the rest, man, it still remains missing to this day. So let's talk about the suspects. Over the decades, investigators examined hundreds of suspects. One of the most famous was Richard McCoy Jr., a skydiver who carried out a very similar hijacking months later. Another was Kenneth Christensen, a former airline employee with parachute experience. And a third was Robert Rackstraw, a Vietnam veteran with explosives training. Each lead seemed very, very promising, but none could be proven to be D.B. Cooper. The truth, well, it just remained way out of reach. And eventually the FBI steps away, and after more than 40 years of investigation, the FBI made a surprising announcement. In 2016, they officially suspended the case. Resources would be shifted to newer investigations, but the mystery of D.B. Cooper remained. And it remained unsolved. That's crazy. 40 years later, a man jumps out of an airplane in the middle of the night in one of the most forested regions of the United States in 200-mile-an-hour winds with $200,000 strapped to him, and they never found anything but those stacks of cash the kid found buried along the Columbia River. That's incredible. So in finalization, some investigators believe Cooper died the night he jumped, lost in the mountains of Washington State. Others believe something even more incredible, that he actually survived. That somewhere out there, a quiet man once lived out his life with a secret that no one ever discovered. Because if D.B. Cooper survived, then on a cold November night in 1971, a man stepped out of an airplane into a storm and disappeared with $200,000. And the world never caught him. What a crazy story, y'all. But very, very true. Now, y'all, here are 3 of the strangest and creepiest facts about the case of D.B. Cooper that many documentaries only briefly mention. These clues kept the investigation alive for decades, and they still fuel theories today, mainly on the internet. The tie that changed the investigation. You see, when Cooper prepared to jump from the Boeing 727, he removed his black clip-on tie and left it behind on the seat. And for years, investigators thought it was useless. Then in 2007, forensic scientists re-examined the tie using modern technology, and what they found was shocking. Microscopic particles embedded in the fabric included titanium, cerium, rare industrial metals used in aerospace manufacturing. These metals were extremely unusual for everyday environments in the early 70s. That discovery suggested Cooper may have worked in aircraft manufacturing, aerospace engineering, or a high-tech industrial facility, which would explain why he seems so familiar with the aircraft's unique rear staircase system. In other words, Cooper might not have been just a random criminal. He may have been someone with technical aviation knowledge. Number 2, the parachute he chose was the absolute worst parachute he could have ever chosen. Investigators later discovered something odd about the parachutes Cooper selected. When authorities delivered 4 parachutes to the plane, Cooper chose one that experienced skydivers later described as the absolute worst option. It was an older military parachute, harder to control and not ideal for steering during a jump. Even stranger, he left behind the better, more modern parachute. This created a huge debate among investigators. And either Cooper wasn't as experienced skydiver as we thought, or he knew something investigators didn't. Some experts believe he may have intentionally chosen that parachute because it had a larger canopy, better suited for carrying the heavy ransom bag. Others believed he grabbed it by mistake in the dark. And that single choice, well, it still confuses the experts. And number 3, final. The money that appeared out of nowhere. Remember, in 1980, a young boy named Brian Ingram was playing on a sandbar, the Tina Bar, along the Columbia River. And that's when he uncovered 3 bundles of decaying cash. The serial numbers matched the ransom money from the Cooper hijack. But you see, here's where the strange part comes in. The location where the money was found did not match the FBI's estimated jump zone. Investigators believe the current of the river could not have naturally carried the money there from where Cooper likely landed. And some scientists even suggested the money may have been buried deliberately at the riverbank, which raises an eerie possibility. Someone may have returned to the scene years later and buried part of the ransom. Why? No one knows. And the final mystery, after more than 45 years, the FBI officially suspended the investigation in 2016. But the mystery remains one of the most famous unsolved crimes in American history. Did Cooper die in the mountains of Washington, or did a quiet man somewhere live the rest of his life knowing he had pulled off the most amazing unsolved skyjacking in United States history? No body, no parachute, almost none of the money, just a tie and a legend.